The idea for the treehouse first blossomed during a family camping trip in the woods. Surrounded by towering pines and the sounds of nature, my kids, Mia and Jake, laid on their backs, gazing up at the swaying branches, imagining all the adventures they could have high above the ground. It was during those starry nights filled with laughter and stories that I promised them we would build our very own treehouse in our backyard, a sanctuary for their imaginations. With a sketchbook in hand, I began to design a structure that would not just be a place to play, but a magical retreat for the entire family. The finished product soared a good 10 feet off the ground, nestled comfortably among the sturdy branches of our old oak tree. Crafted from reclaimed wood planks and adorned with colorful fairy lights, it resembled something straight out of a storybook. A rope ladder dangled down like a friendly invitation, and inside, we added cozy cushions and an array of books for lazy afternoons. The moment we unveiled the treehouse was one I will never forget. As Mia and Jake scrambled up the rope ladder, their eyes sparkled with excitement. They declared it their castle in the sky, where they could hold royal meetings or embark on daring quests through imaginary lands. My heart swelled watching them laugh and play. It felt like all my efforts had been worth it. We quickly made it part of our family tradition to spend evenings in the treehouse. Whether it was sharing ghost stories by flashlight or enjoying snacks under the glow of twinkling lights, it became our special hideaway from daily life's hustle. Neighbors often commented on how delightful it looked, some even stopping by to get a glimpse inside. We hosted small gatherings as well, an impromptu picnic here or an evening campfire there, turning our backyard into a hub of joy and creativity. Yet what truly set our treehouse apart were its personalized touches. Each wall told a story. We painted murals depicting adventures from favorite children's books. A small weather vane shaped like an owl perched atop, keeping watch over our merry gatherings. We even hung up a little bell that rang softly when the wind blew, a sound that signified happiness to us, echoing through warm summer evenings. It was this very joy that made me oblivious to what would come next, how something so innocent could draw unwanted attention from someone like HOA Karen. Little did I know that my dreams for my children's adventure space would soon clash with her rigid vision of neighborhood conformity. But for now, I held on to that blissful feeling of family togetherness high above the ground, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond our backyard fence. In our quiet neighborhood, there was one figure who loomed larger than life, HOA Karen. Sporting an ever-present scowl and a clipboard, she seemed to thrive on the idea that rules were meant to be enforced with a firm hand. Karen had lived in the area for over a decade and had made it her mission to uphold what she deemed neighborhood standards. Armed with an extensive knowledge of the local guidelines, she would often patrol the streets, eyes peeled for any perceived infractions. Her personality was a blend of stubbornness and self-righteousness, which made her infamous among residents. While some neighbors found her amusing, her dramatic proclamations about keeping up appearances often elicited eye rolls. Others felt genuine intimidation. Karen had a way of making her discontent known, whether through long-winded letters stuffed into mailboxes or direct confrontations at the community park. It wasn't unusual for her to rally a small group of supporters who shared her views, further amplifying her influence in the neighborhood. Over the years, many families had fallen victim to her overzealous enforcement of petty rules. There was the Johnsons, who received multiple warnings for their vibrant flower garden deemed too wild, and the Smiths, who faced complaints about their children's inflatable pool taking up too much yard space. Karen would often parade around the neighborhood with an air of authority that suggested she had been elected mayor rather than simply being a resident. Despite her prickly demeanor, Karen's history with other residents revealed layers of insecurity. Perhaps it was rooted in a desire for control in an ever-changing world. The truth was, she seemed to find purpose in policing every corner of our community, a misguided effort to create a perfect suburban utopia that existed only in her mind. When we first moved in, I didn't pay much attention to her antics. Like many newcomers, I assumed she was simply another eccentric neighbor. But as I began settling into my new home, it became clear that ignoring HOA Karen was not an option. her presence was impossible to overlook. She would pop up unannounced during neighborhood gatherings, inserting herself into conversations and steering them towards compliance with her vision of propriety. It wasn't until I erected the treehouse that I truly grasped the extent of her influence. The cheerful structure that stood proudly against the backdrop of our backyard quickly caught Karen's eye. She viewed it as an affront to her meticulously curated community standards. Little did I know then that my family's joyful retreat would soon make me public enemy number one in Karen's eyes, setting off a series of events that would change everything I thought I knew about neighborhood dynamics and personal freedom. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, the kind that beckoned for outdoor play. The laughter of Mia and Jake echoed from the treehouse as they played make-believe pirates, swinging foam swords and plotting their next adventure. I was tending to my garden nearby when I noticed a shadow flicker across the grass. Glancing up, I saw HOA Karen making her way toward me, her expression a mix of discontent and determination. "Excuse me," she called, her voice piercing through the cheerful atmosphere. I felt a chill run down my spine as I put down my gardening tools, bracing myself for what was sure to be an uncomfortable conversation. "We need to talk about that structure," she said, gesturing dramatically towards the treehouse. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what exactly her problem was. "You mean the treehouse?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light despite the tension brewing in the air. "Yes, the treehouse," she replied, crossing her arms as if to shield herself from any argument I might offer. "It's completely against community regulations. You really should have checked with the HOA before building it." She glanced around as if expecting neighbors to appear at any moment to back her up. I hesitated, feeling a rush of disbelief wash over me. "But we're not part of your HOA, I explained cautiously, searching for clarity amidst her fervor. "We don't fall under your jurisdiction." Karen scoffed, shaking her head dismissively. "That doesn't matter. It's about community standards and aesthetics. It just doesn't belong here." Her eyes narrowed as she scrutinized the treehouse's design, its painted walls and fairy lights, as if they were somehow offensive. Struggling to maintain my composure, I reminded myself that Karen often exaggerated community standards to serve her own agenda. Still, her unfounded accusations struck a nerve. "It's a family project meant to inspire creativity and joy for my kids," I said firmly, hoping to appeal to her sense of reason or humanity. But Karen was unfazed. "Joy? What about the joy of keeping this neighborhood looking respectable? A whimsical treehouse does not align with that vision." Her voice rose slightly as she emphasized her point, drawing attention from a few curious onlookers who had begun to gather at their windows. As her words hung in the air, I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. How could someone so intent on enforcing conformity overlook the happiness my children experienced in their own backyard? With each passing moment, it became clear that this would not be a simple conversation. HOA Karen was gearing up for a battle over something that should have been a source of joy. "I'll be reporting this," she declared with finality, turning sharply on her heel before leaving me standing there, mouth agape and heart racing. The carefree laughter of Mia and Jake faded momentarily as reality set in. The treehouse might soon become more than just a place of fun. It was now at the center of an impending feud that would test our family's spirit in ways we never anticipated. After that tense confrontation with HOA Karen, I felt a mix of confusion and frustration swirling in my mind. As I tried to process her claims about community regulations, I realized I had assumed that living in our neighborhood meant we were part of her HOA. But as the dust settled, clarity began to dawn on me: we weren't members of her association at all. My heart raced as I began to understand the implications of this revelation. The next morning, fueled by curiosity and a need for reassurance, I decided to research the specifics of local HOA regulations. Armed with a cup of coffee and my laptop, I scoured the internet for information about property rights and community associations in our area. What I discovered was both enlightening and empowering. while HOAs can impose rules on their members concerning aesthetics and property use, they have no authority over those who aren't members. With each passing moment, my initial shock transformed into a sense of empowerment. My property was mine alone, I had every right to build whatever brought happiness to my family, provided it complied with general zoning laws. The mere thought of being able to defend our treehouse, our sanctuary, filled me with renewed vigor. It was astonishing how easily fear could cloud judgment when faced with someone like Karen, who thrived on intimidation. However, as I read further into the topic, I found myself grappling with another wave of confusion. How could someone so insistent on enforcing compliance over a structure that didn't infringe upon any laws manage to have such influence in our community? Karen's past actions suddenly made more sense. She wasn't merely a self-appointed enforcer, she was wielding her power over others who perhaps didn't know their rights or were too afraid to challenge her. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I felt ready to confront the situation head-on. The next time Karen approached me, or if it came down to involving law enforcement, I would be prepared. This was not just about a treehouse, it was about standing firm against an unwarranted claim that could set a dangerous precedent for how neighbors treated one another in our community. As the days passed, my confidence grew alongside the realization that we were not alone in this struggle. Many of our neighbors had been subjected to Karen's relentless scrutiny and might feel just as frustrated by her antics as I did. Perhaps this situation presented an opportunity not only to defend our family's beloved treehouse but also to foster unity among residents resistant to being bullied by Karen's misguided attempts at control. With determination settling in my heart, I couldn't help but wonder how far this conflict would go. Would it end with a simple conversation or escalate into something more significant? Whatever lay ahead, I was resolute in protecting what mattered most, my family's happiness and our right to enjoy our home fully. The air grew thick with tension as the days passed following my initial confrontation with HOA Karen. What had begun as a simple disagreement over the treehouse quickly escalated into a series of increasingly serious accusations. It felt like every encounter brought a new wave of hostility from her, and I could sense her determination to undermine our family's happiness. One afternoon while I was in the backyard, I noticed Karen lurking across the street, her gaze fixed on our treehouse. It was as if she were waiting for a reason to unleash her frustrations. The sight unnerved me, but I tried to focus on Mia and Jake, who were busy constructing their own imaginative world within the treehouse. Suddenly, Karen stormed over, this time carrying what looked like a notebook filled with notes. "Do you have any idea how many complaints I've received about that thing?" she fumed, pointing an accusatory finger toward the treehouse. "It's an eyesore and completely out of character for this neighborhood." I took a deep breath, ready to defend our sanctuary once again. "Karen, we've discussed this. We're not in your HOA, and we're well within our rights to have it," I responded firmly yet respectfully. But instead of backing down, her demeanor changed. She turned defensive and started listing off supposed violations, many of which seemed entirely fabricated or exaggerated. "You're disrupting the peace. How can other residents enjoy their properties when they have to look at that monstrosity?" she shouted, causing Mia and Jake to peek out from behind the treehouse walls, their innocent faces painted with confusion. Just as I was about to explain how our treehouse brought joy to our family and fostered creativity in my children, Karen took it a step further. "This is going beyond just aesthetics. I'm calling the police," she declared dramatically, her voice rising in pitch. In that moment, my stomach dropped. I couldn't believe she would resort to involving law enforcement over something so trivial. "Call them if you want, but you'll see," I said defiantly. My heart raced as I realized this was no longer just an argument between neighbors, it had morphed into something much more serious, a confrontation that could have legal implications. As she whipped out her phone to make the call right in front of me, I felt my frustration boil over. How could someone take such drastic measures over a harmless structure meant for play? The reality began to sink in. This wasn't merely about the treehouse anymore, it was about power dynamics and whether we would allow fear-driven individuals like Karen to dictate how we lived our lives. In that moment of anger and disbelief, I resolved to stand my ground more firmly than ever before. If it came down to a visit from law enforcement, I would ensure they understood the situation clearly. After all, our treehouse was built on love and imagination, not defiance against community standards. As Karen ended her call and turned back toward me with a smug expression, I knew that whatever happened next would be pivotal not just for us but potentially for others who had been bullied by her tactics in silence. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog as I stood in my backyard, waiting for the arrival of law enforcement. Moments after Karen's threatening phone call, I had steeled myself for what was about to unfold. A part of me felt anxious, but another part was fiercely determined to set the record straight. Within minutes, a police car pulled up, its flashing lights casting a stark glow against the backdrop of our suburban street. Two officers stepped out. One was a seasoned officer with graying hair and kind eyes, while the other was younger and appeared eager but nervous. They approached slowly, taking note of the situation unfolding before them. Karen wasted no time, her fingers pointed accusingly toward our beloved treehouse as if it were a criminal on trial. "Officers," she called out dramatically. "This structure is not only an eyesore but also a violation of community standards. I demand you take action." I took a deep breath, feeling the need to present my side clearly. "Excuse me, officers," I said respectfully, turning to face them. "I'd like to explain that we are not part of HOA Karen's jurisdiction and that our treehouse is simply a family project meant for joy and creativity." The senior officer nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging my attempt at clarity without an immediate judgment. "Let's hear both sides," he suggested with an air of professionalism that calmed my nerves slightly. Karen quickly interjected with her list of grievances, how our treehouse disrupted the neighborhood aesthetics and supposedly made life unbearable for her and others. Her voice grew shrill as she recounted multiple imaginary complaints she had heard from neighbors who were nowhere in sight. Meanwhile, the younger officer glanced at me with raised eyebrows as if to say he saw through her exaggerated claims. I seized the opportunity to elaborate on our intentions behind building the treehouse, the precious moments it provided for my children, how it fostered creativity rather than discord. As we spoke, the senior officer took notes and gently asked questions to clarify details further. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding our perspective while remaining neutral about Karen's impassioned claims. There was something reassuring about how calmly he handled both sides. It made me feel like justice would prevail. After some back-and-forth dialogue between all parties involved, the officers conferred privately for a moment before returning to us. "While we appreciate your concerns," said the senior officer addressing Karen directly, "it appears that this matter is more about personal feelings than actual legal violations." He turned his gaze towards me again. "As long as your treehouse complies with local zoning laws, and it seems to be within your rights, it would not be appropriate for us to take any action." Relief washed over me like a warm wave. I could see Mia and Jake peeking from behind their fortress, smiling cautiously at what felt like victory unfolding before them. As Karen simmered silently with indignation beside us, I couldn't help but feel empowered by this encounter, not just in defending our right to enjoy our home but also in knowing that truth had prevailed here today amid chaos created by one person's relentless pursuit of control. In the days following the police visit, the neighborhood buzzed with conversation about the treehouse incident. It was as if a storm had erupted, shaking the very foundation of our community dynamics. As I tended to my garden, I could overhear snippets of discussions from neighbors walking by or gathering at their mailboxes, their voices oscillating between support for our family's right to enjoy our property and concern over Karen's persistent complaints. To my surprise, several neighbors approached me directly, expressing their solidarity. Mrs. Thompson from across the street, a grandmotherly figure known for her warm smile and freshly baked cookies, stopped by one afternoon with a plate of her signature chocolate chip treats. "I just wanted you to know that I think your treehouse is lovely," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Karen's just upset because she doesn't have any fun in her yard." Her words warmed my heart and offered reassurance that not everyone shared Karen's rigid views. Mr. Rodriguez next door also weighed in during a community barbecue later that weekend. "I've seen how happy Mia and Jake are when they're up there," he remarked, gesturing toward the treehouse with a broad smile. "Kids need places to dream and play. If we let Karen dictate what we can do, where does it end?" His perspective resonated deeply with me. It felt like a rallying cry against an unwarranted authority. However, there were also whispers among some residents who sided with Karen, those who valued conformity over creativity. A few held back their opinions publicly but expressed concern that my treehouse might set a precedent for other unconventional projects in the neighborhood. "What if others start building things without checking in?" one neighbor murmured to another during a weekend gathering, casting wary glances toward our backyard. Despite this mixed response, it was clear that Karen's approach had sparked a greater conversation about community values and individual rights. People began discussing not only my situation but also sharing their own experiences with restrictions imposed by HOA rules or Karen's personal brand of enforcement. As time passed, I noticed more families engaging in discussions on their porches or in front yards instead of retreating indoors as they once did, a small shift towards fostering connections amid controversy. It seemed that many were tired of feeling intimidated by Karen's self-appointed role as the arbiter of neighborhood norms. The pivotal moment came during an impromptu block party organized by those who supported our family. Neighbors gathered under string lights and shared food while kids dashed around playing games, all while Mia and Jake reveled in climbing up and down their beloved treehouse. The atmosphere was electric with laughter and camaraderie as people exchanged stories about creativity versus conformity. Through all this, I realized that while Karen tried to isolate us through her complaints, she inadvertently united many within the community who felt similarly stifled by her overreach. Our treehouse had become more than just a structure. It symbolized resilience against unreasonable control and sparked conversations about joy, imagination, and the importance of standing together as neighbors rather than divided by fear. As the situation with HOA Karen unfolded, I found myself reflecting on the broader implications of being part of a homeowners association, HOA, versus being a private property owner. This conflict had illuminated for me the complexities surrounding property rights and community governance, and I began to delve into what it truly means to belong to an HOA. For many homeowners, joining an HOA often feels like a double-edged sword. On one hand, HOAs can provide valuable benefits, such as maintaining common areas, enforcing community aesthetics, and offering a sense of security through established regulations. For some residents, these features can enhance property values and foster a sense of community pride. However, on the flip side lies a web of costs, privileges, and restrictions that can feel stifling. Joining an HOA typically involves monthly or annual dues that fund communal amenities and upkeep. While these fees can be reasonable for well-maintained parks or swimming pools, they can also add up significantly over time. Homeowners must weigh whether the benefits provided by the HOA justify these additional expenditures. In contrast, as a private property owner outside of an HOA's jurisdiction, I am free from such financial obligations while still enjoying my home's full potential. However, the most significant difference lies in how decisions are made regarding property use. HOAs often impose strict rules outlining everything from paint colors to landscaping choices, all intended to preserve a cohesive aesthetic within the community. While many residents appreciate these guidelines as helpful for maintaining order and beauty, others view them as intrusive overreach that undermines personal freedoms. The furor around my treehouse was precisely about this tension. Karen believed her interpretation of community standards should govern how I utilize my private space. What became evident to me was that the control exercised by HOAs can lead to power dynamics that favor conformity over creativity. Individuals like Karen leveraged their roles as enforcers to impose their views on others. This situation highlighted how people might feel pressured to comply with often arbitrary standards for fear of repercussions, complaints filed against them or diminished standing in their neighborhood. In my case, understanding that we were not bound by Karen's HOA membership empowered me to stand firm against her accusations. Armed with knowledge about my rights as a private homeowner, I could defend our family's treehouse, a symbol of our joy and imagination, against her claims without fear of legal retribution. Reflecting on this conflict allowed me to appreciate the importance of advocating for one's own rights while also recognizing the value of community engagement. It is possible to enjoy individual freedoms while fostering neighborly relationships based on mutual respect rather than rigid adherence to enforced norms. The treehouse incident had sparked not only a confrontation between my family and Karen but also broader conversations among neighbors about freedom versus control, a sentiment that resonated deeply throughout our community following the events that transpired. Ultimately, it served as a reminder that harmony can exist when creativity is embraced instead of stifled by unwarranted oversight. As I reflected on the entire ordeal with HOA Karen and the treehouse, I recognized that this experience had imparted invaluable lessons about community dynamics, personal boundaries, and the importance of standing up for one's rights. What initially felt like a personal attack soon evolved into a broader understanding of how our neighborhood operates and the delicate balance between individual expression and collective norms. One of the most significant realizations was the power of community support. Initially, I felt isolated in my struggle against Karen, who had wielded her authority like a weapon. However, as more neighbors rallied around us, I learned that there is strength in numbers. The block party became not just a celebration of creativity but also a testament to the collective spirit of residents who were tired of feeling intimidated by Karen's overbearing attitude. This newfound camaraderie underscored how important it is to foster relationships with neighbors and create an environment where everyone feels empowered to voice their opinions. I also learned that establishing personal boundaries is crucial. The conflict with Karen taught me that it's essential to know when to draw the line, not just for myself, but for my children as well. By defending our right to build the treehouse, I was not only protecting our family's happiness but also teaching Mia and Jake an important lesson about standing firm against unjust claims. They witnessed firsthand how one can confront adversity with dignity and resolve, cultivating an understanding of personal rights that they would carry into their futures. Moreover, this experience highlighted the necessity of being informed about one's rights as a property owner. Knowledge truly is power. Once I understood that we were not bound by Karen's HOA, I felt emboldened to defend our space without trepidation. It became clear that many homeowners may not fully grasp their rights or may hesitate to assert them due to fear of repercussions. This revelation inspired me to advocate not only for my family but also to encourage others in the community to be aware of their property rights, thus fostering a supportive network where residents feel comfortable challenging unwarranted authority. Finally, I came to appreciate the importance of open dialogue within a community. The conversations sparked by our situation encouraged other residents to share their experiences with Karen's enforcement tactics, leading to discussions about creativity versus conformity. It was gratifying to see neighbors coming together to explore solutions that respected both individual expression and collective standards. In essence, the ordeal taught me that while conflicts may arise from differing views on community standards, they can also catalyze positive change. By standing up for our beliefs and fostering supportive relationships with neighbors, we can create a community that values both creativity and respect, one where individuals feel free to express themselves while still caring for the collective good. This journey has transformed our treehouse from merely a play structure into a symbol of resilience and unity in our neighborhood, reminding us all that it's possible to embrace both individuality and connection amid challenges. As I stood in our backyard, watching Mia and Jake climb up and down the treehouse, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey we had undergone. What began as a source of conflict had blossomed into an opportunity to foster stronger ties within our community. The block party that followed Karen's complaints was just the beginning. It ignited a series of positive changes among neighbors eager to connect with one another. In the weeks following the incident, I noticed a shift in how residents interacted. People who once kept to themselves began gathering more frequently, sharing stories and experiences over cups of coffee or casual barbecues. Even those who had initially sided with Karen started to realize that community spirit thrives on shared joy and creativity, rather than strict adherence to arbitrary rules. It was heartening to see families come together, whether for playdates at the park or collaborative gardening projects in front yards. One remarkable change was the establishment of a neighborhood association formed by residents who wanted to create an inclusive environment that celebrated individuality while still respecting collective standards. We organized meetings to discuss ways we could improve our community, not through imposed restrictions but through collaborative efforts. Initiatives like community cleanup days and seasonal festivals were born from these discussions, allowing everyone to contribute their ideas and talents freely. The experience also taught me the importance of open communication. I made a conscious effort to reach out to neighbors regularly, not just during conflicts but as part of building relationships. I invited them over for casual gatherings at our home, where we could discuss everything from landscaping tips to family activities. As people became more comfortable with one another, it was easier to address any concerns before they escalated like they had with Karen. Moreover, I took on a role as an advocate for understanding property rights among residents. I organized informal workshops focused on educating homeowners about local regulations and their rights as property owners. Empowering others with knowledge helped cultivate confidence within our community. People began to feel less intimidated and more willing to voice their opinions. Reflecting on my interactions with HOA Karen, I realized that while she had initially created an environment of fear and division, her actions inadvertently prompted us all to grow closer together. In some strange way, her attempts at enforcing conformity sparked a vibrant dialogue about creativity and personal expression that resonated well beyond our backyard. Looking ahead, I am hopeful for the future of our neighborhood. The Treehouse stands proud as a testament not only to childhood imagination but also to the power of resilience in community dynamics. Together, we can embrace both individual freedoms and collective responsibilities without sacrificing one for the other. As Mia and Jake continue to play in their beloved treehouse, they are not just having fun, they are part of a larger story, one that champions creativity, connection, and mutual respect among neighbors willing to stand up for their rights while fostering a warm sense of belonging.